Hello there. My name is Sharon Rosina Wamalwa. I'm a business analyst, and here I have another healthcare data analysis project that I did with SQL using the MySQL software. One of my goals doing this project was to uncover patient trends, fairness, and hospital efficiency. So let's dig in. I used MySQL, I used joins, I used cities, I used Cas1, I used some queries. So let's go. The business problem that I was trying to uncover with the dataset, before I forget the dataset, I got it from Kaggle. So I had 4 business problems. As you can see, this is operational efficiency, procedure versus length, if they have a correlation, healthcare equity, and racial bias, and I had readmission risk. So I wanted to understand the hospital is struggling with patient turnover. Patient turnover is so many patients are taking longer in the hospital. So management suspects some patients are staying too long, but they don't know why or which departments are responsible. So can the data I have tell us like what is driving longer stays in the hospital? Number 2, is the hospital treating all patients equally, regardless of race? So different races always visit the hospital. We have African Americans, we have Asians, we have Hispanics. So are these certain racial groups receiving fewer lab procedures than others intentionally or unintentionally? And are they receiving equal treatment? The number 3, procedure versus length of stay correlation. Is there a measurable, provable link between how many lab procedures a patient undergoes and how many days they spend in the hospital? So, or is it just an assumption? We know that maybe if you have so many lab procedures, your chances of staying in the hospital are longer compared to those who have fewer lab procedures. But we want to know, is it an assumption or will our data set tell us that? And then the last was readmission risk. Are the most heavily medicated patients more likely to be readmitted? Because there is this issue of maybe those who are being readmitted are the ones who are staying longer in hospital. So is high medication load a warning sign that the clinical team should be acting on? So number 1, I had to explore my data. Database I was using was patient. I used simple SQL query, select from health, select from demographics, because I had 2 tables, the health and the demographics. So in total, I had 46 columns. And in some of these columns, I had missing data as expected. Here, I highlighted the key columns that I used in my analysis. This is encounter ID, which is a unique ID for each hospital visit. Anytime a patient visits the hospital, visit 1, visit 2, visit 3, they're given an encounter ID. This patient themselves, they have a patient unique identifier. The column that I'll use most of the time will be time in hospital. These are the days spent. This is a core metric of the analysis because we want to reduce the number of stays of patients in the hospital. So I will use this column quite a lot in my analysis. We have admission type, we have medical specialty, we have the number of lab procedures. So the next thing is, let me tell you, I was trying to visualize with SQL. So I wanted to understand the number of days in the hospital and how many patients are always there, the count of patients each day at the hospital. So I had to put them in buckets like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. So I used the round function because I wanted to make sure that my time in hospital is a whole number, and then to count the number of patients in that, like day 1, they have 14,000, 17,000, and all that. So this is the output I got in SQL. So how I did this is that I used the RPAD. RPAD puts asterisks in your SQL output from right. That's what it's called, an RPAD, from right to left, hence generating some sort of a histogram. So as you can see from my data, so I had to export the output and put it in Excel so that it can be easier to visualize. You'll see that in day 2 and day 3, this is when we have so many patients staying in the hospital. And then as it gets to day 4, day 5, day 6, they are declining. It's like we're getting more patients being discharged, and day 7 has the least number of patients in the hospital. So since we know that, and our hospital management, they've told us that this is what they're trying to reduce, the longer stays in the hospital, I had a query on distinct specialties. I wanted to understand the medical departments that, number 1, are in the hospital, and then number 2, the procedures that they do on average and how many patients they deal with. So I used the SQL distinct function, and then we had The medical departments you have are like surgery, cardiovascular and thoracic, cardiology, orthopedic, internal med, pediatrics, endocrinology. Quite a heavy medical term. And then I wanted to understand the number of procedures that each specialty does and the count of patients. As you can see, the surgery department has the highest number of procedures and just a small number of 652. But internal med has a few number of procedures, but with a high count of patients. So one of the insights, I was like, surgical specialties, they do the most procedures per patient, the most CT scans, X-ray and all that. But internal medicine, it has the highest number of patients. That's by far the busiest department, but the average is only 1.01, meaning most cases in the internal med, they're like straightforward. They're not like time consuming. Yeah. Now, in my fifth query, this is the question I was trying to answer. Which medical specialties are both busy and doing a high number of procedures and therefore most likely causing longer hospital stays? So as you can see, out of all the specialties, so here I had to use distinct to get the medical specialty, rounding off the number of procedures, and it was from the health table because the health table is on that contained it, and I used the having clause to aggregate. I wanted the count higher than 50 because you can be in a department that maybe does 1 procedure, 2 procedures, 3 procedures, but I wanted to understand those ones that are doing more than 50 procedures. So as you can see, out of all those specialties, I had surgery vascular, cardiology, radiologist, surgery cardiovascular, and surgery thoracic. What does this tell you? It looks like it's mostly in the surgical department that do have a high number of procedures, greater than 50, and the average is above 2.5. It's a very, very good pattern. And this leads to longer stays in the hospital. Now, the next thing I wanted to uncover is the hospital giving the same level of lab testing to all patients regardless of their race, or is there bias? So here I had to use the join. So joining 2 tables, the health table and the demographics table, and filter and joining them on the number, the patient ID, because both of them, they have the patient ID. So to uncover, you can be able to say that we have African American, we have other, we have Caucasian, we have Hispanic, we have Asian, and we have the unknown list. This is part of the missing data. Maybe a patient never filled out the rest. And you can see that African Americans are 44. Caucasian are 43 Asian. The disparity isn't that large. So here, this data can't fully tell us if there is bias or not. And then with the missing information here, it's also quite a large number, actually similar to African American. So this can't truly fully confirm fairness until those missing records are resolved. Now, to the next query I had is there a direct link between how many lab procedures a patient has? Remember this, we're talking about like one patient, and how long they stay in the hospital. So this one patient, is there a correlation like the number of lab tests that procedures or tests that this patient does and the number of days that this one patient stays in the hospital? So for this, I used something called case when. It's similar to the if-else statement, a conditional statement for those who have done other programming languages like Python. So I created three brackets. The first bracket I created was if a patient had between 0 to 24 lab procedures, then I will label them in the few bucket. If they had between 25 and 54, I'll label them as average. And if they had 55 or more, I'll label them as mean. So as you can see, for those who had few lab procedures, they took 3.28 days, approximately 3 days to stay in the hospital. And it's like 17,486 patients. For those who are on average had maybe 25 to 54 lab procedures, they stayed approximately 4 days. And these are like 54, quite a huge number, 54, 501 patients. And those who had so many lab procedures, they took 5 to 6 days in the hospital, and they're like 29,799 patients. So with this, we can be able to tell that the more procedures a patient undergoes, the more days they stay in the hospital. So is there a way that maybe the hospital can be able to prioritize if it's having many equipments, prioritizing getting results as soon as possible so that they can be able to release or discharge the patient using fewer days. Now, on to the other question I had is, who are the top 50 most heavily medicated patients? And can we present that information in a clear, human readable format rather than raw data? For this query, I was answering this. I want to know, I was answering, are readmitted patients also counting to longer stays? Or is it that those who come for the first visit are the ones who are counting for longer stays? And for this, I just didn't want to give the hospital management an Excel table. No, I wanted to give them in a readable format for them to be able to just know that patient ID was this race and was readmitted. They had this 81 medication and 57 lab procedures. So the question here that I was trying to do is that, can I be able to take raw database columns and turn them into proper readable sentences automatically? And I did this using the concat. So I also embedded the case when, so that is like case when readmitted, no, then was not readmitted, they had else, was readmitted, they had, and I used the case when here. So the results were also sorted by the NAM medication in descending from first to last. And I also use an inner join because I was now connecting both tables, the patient table and the demographic table. So as you can see, it was able, giving this to the hospital management, they can be able to see that this patient was African American and was admitted. They had this number of medication and 59 lab procedures in human readable sentences, and was able to achieve this using the concat statement. Now, some of the findings here that I had is that most patients, they leave the hospital 2 to 3 days. Day 7 has the minority. And also, when it comes to racial fairness, is that there wasn't major disparity that was detected. Every patient is given equal treatment. And then procedure drives stays. The more a patient has so many lab procedures, the longer they stay in the hospital. And also, one of the conclusions that I can draw is that this project proves that SQL queries can turn hospitals' biggest concerns into clear, data-backed answers that you can easily understand. And I was able to put into practice some of the SQL functions that I practiced in class and also in my bootcamp, such as the case when using halving and be able to draw insightful conclusions from my analytics. Well, so that is basically it. I welcome any feedback. And thank you for listening. Bye. Mhm.